Welcome, and thank you for standing by. All participants will be able to listen only until the question and answer portion of today's conference. At that time, please press star 1. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, please disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the conference over to Kathleen Ellis. Thank you. You may begin.
Good evening. Welcome and thank you for joining us for today's media pre-launch teleconference from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Kathleen Ellis with NASA's Office of Communications. We are here to discuss NASA and SpaceX's CRS-25 commercial resupply services mission to the International Space Station. SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft will lift off from Launch Complex 39A at the agency's Kennedy Space Center in Florida to deliver new science investigations, supplies, and equipment for the international crew, including a new climate research investigation. Teams from NASA and SpaceX just completed the launch readiness review for the mission. Senior representatives here to talk more about this important review are Dana Weigel, Deputy Program Manager with NASA's International Space Station Program, Heidi Paris, Associate Scientist, also with NASA's International Space Station Program, Benjamin Reed, Senior Director with SpaceX's Human Spaceflight Programs, and Brian Chiswick, Launch Weather Officer with Cape Canaveral Space Force Station's 45th Weather Squadron. We will begin with opening comments from our speakers and then open it up for questions. To get into the question queue, please press star 1 on your phone. About 1 hour after we conclude today's teleconference, you can listen to the replay of this teleconference online. We will begin with comments from Dana Weigel.
All right, thanks, Kathleen, and thank you all for tuning in this evening. We had a good, clean launch readiness review today, and we're looking forward to tomorrow's launch of the SpaceX 25 cargo Dragon. The Dragon is going to be carrying over 5,800 pounds of supplies and cargo, and just a couple science highlights that I'll share with you, and our scientist Heidi will go in a lot more detail, but a couple things that stand out to me is we're flying a new NASA external science experiment that's called the Earth Surface Mineral Dust Source Investigation, or EMIT. That's one of our external payloads. That's going to look at the mineral content in airborne dust. Some of the other investigations are immune cells, looking at the aging associated with them and the potential to reverse those effects during post-flight recovery. We've got a CubeSat that monitors cloud top and surface temperatures, and a student experiment that's testing an alternative to concrete for potential use on future lunar and Mars missions. So a lot of exciting things going on in terms of science on this mission. The internal cargo itself is about 4,500 pounds. Half of that is science investigations. We're also bringing up some crew supplies, some EVA hardware, and some vehicle hardware. This is going to be a really busy mission for us. It's packed with a lot of science. The planned duration is about 33 days. The crew on board, they're doing great. They're ready to welcome SpaceX 25, and of course a big highlight for them when we send these missions up is the fresh food that they get on board. For this go-round, we're sending up apples, oranges, cherry tomatoes, some onion, baby carrots, garlic, tahini, cheese, and dry sausage, so a really nice mix of fresh food for the crew. Another kind of interesting highlight for this mission is that we're going to be returning the spacesuit that Mateus wore during EVA 80 back in March when we had the water anomaly in the helmet. That's really key for us. We got to get that suit home to take a look at it as part of the investigation to really try to understand what happened to the suit, and that'll be part of what we need for our assessment for our eventual readiness when we look at returning back to nominal EVAs. In the run-up for the rest of the year, just a couple other highlights on the horizon. We've got the Crew 5, Crew 4 swap out in September. Also in September, the Soyuz crew swap, 68S going up and 67S coming home. Also in the fall after that, starting in the October run-up, we've got the NG-18 cargo mission. And then we've got the SpaceX 26 mission. That SpaceX 26 mission, if you recall, will carry the next set of solar arrays up. And so that's our next target for when we're hoping to be able to do planned EVAs. And with that, I will hand it over to Heidi.
All right. Thank you, Dana. Well, the ISS is now 21 years old, and it's been amazing to watch it grow up over the years. You know, it started as really a small orbiting outpost, has now transformed into a highly capable microgravity laboratory. And it's equipped with dozens of research facilities and has the ability to perform research in every major scientific discipline in a very unique environment on board the station. The international science community has really come together over these 21 years to conduct over 3,000 different science investigations. And all of that research comes in with a single goal, and that's to benefit humanity. So that can take a variety of forms. It can look like new medicines, new technologies, improvements in products that can directly impact our daily lives. It can also look like bigger picture discoveries that can inform and impact our society on a more global scale. Also, we see a lot of economic benefits that result from the continual growth of the space economy. As well, we see the development and the testing of those new technologies that are going to enable humanity to explore further into space in the future. So the SpaceX Dragon cargo vehicles, they are one of the vehicles that make all of this research possible. In addition to being able to send up new and continuing research, these vehicles also have the ability to return samples for post-flight analysis, and that's critical to a lot of our researchers. SpaceX-25 specifically is set to launch hardware in support of right around 40 different science investigations, and it's also going to return the samples and hardware for about 50 investigations. So lots of really great science on this vehicle. Just to provide a couple of highlights and a bit more detail on some of the science that Dana had mentioned, we have a couple of investigations that are using a technology called tissue chips. These are small devices that contain human cells in a 3D matrix, and they can mimic the complex biological functions of specific organs in our bodies. So what we've found is that long-term microgravity affects our bodies in very much the same way as the aging process does, only it happens a lot faster in microgravity. So if we can send these tissue chips, these organ-mimicking devices into space, and then do things like introduce stresses, drugs, genetic changes, we can understand how those biological systems are reacting to these factors on a much quicker time scale. So the tissue chips on this flight are going to be looking at the immune system, seeing how it changes in microgravity, and also looking to see if those changes are reversible. Switching gears a little bit, we do have several new science investigations that are looking to add to our existing suite of Earth observation instruments. They're going to help researchers understand the interdependencies of the Earth's changing ecosystem. So one of those that Dana mentioned, we have the Earth Surface Mineral Dust Source Investigation, also called EMIT. It's going to be measuring the mineral composition of dust in the Earth's arid regions. So we see this dust get stirred up, and it causes large-scale dust storms, and they can be transported thousands of miles across oceans to entirely different continents. And in this process, it can significantly impact, regions around the world where this dust ends up. But we don't fully understand how yet because we don't have a great understanding of what this mineral dust is made of. So EMIT is looking to change that. They are looking to increase our current measurement set, which is right around 5,000 measurements, to somewhere close to 1 billion measurements. So it's a huge scale change. And it really has the potential to close the gap in our understanding of Earth climate models. There's also several studies launching on this flight that are trying to get us one step closer to a sustainable presence outside of the low Earth orbit. One of those is called Dynamos, and it's looking at how we can use soil microorganisms in order to enhance crop growth on long-duration space missions in the future. Another one called biopolymer research for in situ capabilities. It's going to be exploring creation of a concrete alternative that's made by mixing organic materials with dirt, just plain dirt, that contain silica. And silica is a material that's prevalent in the lunar and Martian dust. So lots of potential applications there. So a lot of great science coming up on this flight. If you are interested in staying up to date on the current status of this research on orbit, a great way to do that is on Twitter at ISS_research. And also, I talked a bit about the benefits of ISS research. And if that's a topic that is of interest, the ISS Research Integration Office is just about to publish the 4th edition of the Benefits for Humanity book. It's coming out on or around July 25th. This book is full of examples on how ISS research is benefiting us on a variety of different levels. It's a really great read. I highly recommend it when it comes out. It will be available on the ISS Research and Technology webpage that is located at www.nasa.gov/ISS-science. And with that, I will hand it over to Benji.
Hello. It's an honor to be here with everybody to talk about our next CRS flight. And this is a kind of a personal note. I'll say, I came in to this program here at SpaceX when we were just between the first flight of Dragon and the first flight of Dragon to the space station. And my first opportunity was to manage a CRS flight, CRS-3. So it kind of blows my mind every time when I hear, like, here we are at CRS-25. But again, it's wonderful to be here with these great colleagues from NASA, ISS, and of course, Space Launch Delta 45. As mentioned, we're less than 24 hours away from our 25th cargo resupply mission to ISS. This will be our 3rd mission to space station this year, following the Axiom 1 and Crew 4 missions. Looking ahead, we have several more missions on the manifest to the space station to deliver both crew and cargo. In fact, SpaceX was recently awarded 6 additional commercial resupply services, extending our current CRS manifest up to CRS-35. So again, mind blown. Right now, we're on manifest through 2026 for resupply missions. Again, very honored and very grateful to be able to support all of the great science that we were just hearing about and ongoing research. Obviously, very much in line with our company goals of helping make life multiplanetary, and the work that the station is doing, the research station is doing, benefiting everybody here on Earth, as well as creating that sustainable presence out in LEO and beyond. To speak a little bit speak a little specifically about the vehicles. As you're aware, we worked through an issue on Dragon. The teams had discovered a small vapor leak in our propellant system. After we made this finding, the teams completed thorough inspections and discovered the issue was due to imperfections in the sealing surface where a valve connects into the system. What we did there is we replaced that valve, and then we thoroughly tested the system to confirm that there was no further leakage. The teams also completed inspections and assessments of any and all components that could have been degraded by exposure to the vapor, to the propellant vapor. Out of an abundance of caution, we removed and replaced the main parachutes in order to take a closer look at those parachutes and complete some additional inspections on them. So far, the initial results of some inspections are coming in, and the original parachutes look great, and we'll likely use those on a future mission if the teams determine they're safe to use for flight. Specifically, the CRS-25, the new parachutes came from a future Dragon mission, and that's one of the great benefits of having a fleet, right? We can move various components around as needed in order to help keep flights. We've been working hand in hand with NASA on this whole process. We appreciate their partnership on it, and we are ready to launch. Falcon 9 and Dragon are currently vertical on 39A, and we're looking to a good launch tomorrow evening at 8:44 p.m. Eastern. Our backup opportunity is on Friday if it's needed. It's of note, this is the 3rd flight of this Dragon supporting the mission, and the 5th flight for this booster. And this booster had previously supported launches for CRS-22, Crew 3, Turksat 5B, and most recently Crew 4, so pretty exciting. Reusability is the key to lowering the cost of space flight. This really enables more investments in critical scientific research, such as what we're doing on station, and again, really lowering the cost is what's going to ultimately extend our presence in space as a humanity, as life. I want to note that we're also working closely with NASA on the upcoming Crew 5 launch. Crew and cargo go hand in hand in maintaining space station. We're assessing the hardware and launch date for that mission in the fall, and we're sure we're going to fly our crew safely, as always, is the top priority. We are honored to support NASA and the regular rotation of crew and cargo flights to the station, and really on behalf of all the SpaceX employees and their families and all of our friends and colleagues at NASA, I want to thank NASA and the Space Force for the continued partnership and their trust in SpaceX. And I think now over to Brian for the weather.
All right. Thank you very much, Benji, and good evening, everybody. And really, we're right around the peak of our thunderstorm season here in East Central Florida. But having said that, the general weather pattern and time of day of the launch are working in our favor to some degree. So tomorrow we are going to see a bit of a pattern change than what we've seen the last few days. We're going to see winds, the low-level winds shift a little bit more southerly. So what that will do, that will allow the East Coast sea breeze on Florida that we get just about every day here to push a little bit further inland. So that's what ultimately triggers the thunderstorms that we see just about every day here in Florida. So I think the bulk of the thunderstorm activity is going to be inland tomorrow, and also working in our favor. Upper level winds are coming from the east or northeast direction, so that will help keep some of those anvil clouds that can blow off from the top of thunderstorms, that can hold an electric charge that we are concerned about. That should keep them farther to the west as well. Can't completely rule out a shower moving back over towards the area. Sometimes these storms can send out what we call an outflow, which could push some storms back, or just maybe some showers pushing back towards the area. But overall, conditions looking generally fairly favorable. We have a 30% probability of violation, so that's a 70% probability of go for tomorrow's attempt. The cumulus cloud rule and flight through precipitation are the main concerns. Again, we have a set of 10 lightning launch commit criteria that are designed to protect not just against natural lightning, but also rocket-triggered lightning. A rocket can actually trigger a lightning strike that would not have naturally occurred. So that's what's our job to do, to make sure that that does not happen. And then as we go to the backup day on Friday evening, again, a fairly similar pattern. We have the same probability of violation at 30%, so a 70% chance of go, with the same concerns of the cumulus cloud rule and flight through precipitation constraint. Then as we head to the second backup day for a Saturday evening attempt, we are going to see an upper level feature kind of move into the area that's going to help draw in some more moisture. So we do see a slightly higher probability of violation. We're going to see a bit of a higher shower coverage. So a 40% probability of violation for the cumulus cloud rule, flight through precipitation, and some anvil cloud concerns as well. So to summarize, tomorrow the POV 30%, POV for the first backup day also 30%, and for the second backup day at 40%. So given the time of year that we're in, the middle of July here in Florida, certainly could be a lot worse, and I'll take those. So that's all I have, and I'll throw it back to Kathleen.
Thank you all. So now we'll turn to questions from the media on the line. If you haven't already done so, if you would like to ask a question, you need to press *1 to put you in the question queue. I will call your name and affiliation, and before you ask your question, if you'd please tell us to whom you're directing your question. So first up is Jeff Bost with Space News.
Hey, good evening. Two questions. One for Benji. Is the valve issue that you found isolated to that one case? Did you find it in any other valves on that vehicle or other Dragons? And then for Dana, when is sort of the drop-dead date for finalizing the Crew 5 crew, whether you'll be able to add the Russian cosmonaut to that flight or not? Thanks.
Great. Thank you for the question. This is Benji. I'll tackle that first one about the hardware. It's not a fleet-wide issue. Let's make sure that's really clear. Although we did look very closely at that. One of the very first things that we do, of course, in any issues, we look for containment. We want to make sure that, this isn't spreading beyond, or impacting anything else beyond the specific issue at hand. And then the very first thing we do within containment is look at particularly the vehicle that's either upcoming or the vehicle on station, for example, like Crew 4 is up there. and we confirmed that there's no impact to Crew 4 and across the fleet. And I'll just take a minute here to explain a little bit more about it. It's also not really a valve issue per se. I want to make sure that that's clear as well. The component that is impacted happened to be a valve. Bottom line is, and I think most folks on the call probably are aware of all of this, but I'll just explain it. We've got it's a high pressure system. It's like a plumbing system, and there are unions or joints where things come together. For example, when you install a valve with the various plumbing, the tubes that are in there, and where these components come together, you have to have very pristine sealing surfaces, so that at these unions, at these joints, so that when you tighten them down and bring them together, you're not going to have any leaks coming out of them. In this case specifically, that sealing surface had been reworked a little bit, and it looked like it was great and it was in good shape. And it's in the beginning when we first installed or first integrated this vehicle. We went through the testing, had a sub-assembly and then an assembly level, in that case, those tests didn't quite catch this leak, or it wasn't leaking at that time. And so then when we did find the leak, because we do a full-up system test, and of course we did discover it, we detected the vapor leak. We went through, made sure everything was, that this was the only place where the leak was coming from, and we replaced that particular component, which happened to be a valve, it was just one of the sealing surfaces where the valve connects into the rest of the system. Since then, we've made updates to our processes to a couple of things. One is how you do rework on a sealing surface to ensure that we have even tighter control or stricter, acceptability for a sealing surface. And then also how we test. We're adding even more rigor to the testing that we do as we go through this kind of integration, and after if we deal with anything like this in the future. It's very important to note that this was something that was caught early on because of the testing we already do, and this is well before we're in a situation where we're stacking the vehicle on the pad and worrying about going into launch. This is something that was caught early on. Exactly why we test and inspect and assess, but we're even adding more rigor to that process earlier, both from a process for rework and also process for testing. But hopefully that probably answered your question a lot more, but I just wanted to help kind of put it all out there, make sure everybody's very clear about what happened.
Okay, and this is Dana. I'll answer your other question about integrated crew. We're hopeful that we're pretty close to finalizing the agreement. It is in the final stages of review with both NASA and Roscosmos. Anakikana continues training with Crew 5 per the normal plan. Things are going well there. Similarly, Frank Rubio has been training with the Soyuz crew. So their crew training is in good shape. If we had to make a switch, we've been taking a look at what is the crew training remaining if we really had to change our plan and we weren't going to fly integrated for these upcoming missions. And it looks like we can wait until basically the end of next week, and then we would have some hard trades to make for training. There are things we could probably consider swapping out if we needed to, but that's really kind of our end target to finish ideal flows if we've got to get swap crew members around.
All right, thank you. Jeff, do you have any other follow-up questions? All right, so that is the only media person that's showing up in the question queue. So if you're online and you would like to ask a question, you have to press *1 or we can't see you. So we'll give a moment to see if there's anybody online that still needs to do that. Okay, we see Ken Kramer with Space Up Close.
Hey, thank you for taking my question and for doing this. Do you have a date on the Crew 5 launch yet, as well as I'm wondering about the Cygnus launch, NG-18? I think that was going to be in August. I heard that you're talking about sometime in October. Can you be a little more specific on that, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so for Crew 5 going up, our target is the beginning of September. As we always do, the SpaceX teams will go through their final resolution looking at the vehicle processing or any issues, and we'll adjust it if we need to. But right now, that's where we're holding that flight. For NG, we're looking at mid-October. In fact, they're going through some pretty critical hardware testing. Things are looking good, lining up for that date. So it looks like we're in pretty good shape for mid-October for NG-18.
Okay, could I ask Benji Reed a question too? Is that possible?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious, Benji, you talked about the parachute. Why did you feel the need to replace that parachute? I'm wondering, is it very close to the thruster that was involved, or just, explain it a little bit? Thank you.
Sure. And to be clear, it wasn't a thruster that was involved. It was part of the thruster propellant system, kind of internal to the guts of the Dragon. What we did is that these vapors get around basically, right? It's in gaseous form, and so we wanted to make sure that any kind of interaction that vapor can have, that chemical can have with all of the various materials in Dragon, that we had thoroughly assessed that. And yeah, to your point, it does have to do with location, with a credible place where that vapor could get to, based on where the leak was, and therefore what kind of interactions would we be worrying about. And in this case specifically, we were a little worried about, based on the location where the parachutes were, where the leak was, that the vapor could, have had some interaction with the material the parachutes are made out of. And because of that material type, the chemicals of that material and the chemicals of the vapor, is there some kind of interaction? There's potential there could be. And so that's why, out of really an overabundance of caution, we pulled the parachutes out. Those inspections have started, and we aren't actually seeing any signs of degradation or any kind of impact on the parachute so far. I feel pretty, knock on wood, pretty confident we'll be able to use those parachutes on a future flight. But that's why we looked at the parachutes. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
All right, and I see that Jeff got back into the queue, so do you have another question? All right, so we'll move to Jim Siegel with NASA Tech.
Thank you for taking my question, and good luck to everyone there on that on the launch tomorrow. I have a question about and I believe this is for Heidi. I believe you mentioned that there were 15 investigations coming back on CRS-25 that had been already up in the ISS, and I wondered if you could list what some of those might be. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, we have about 50 investigations coming back on SpaceX 25, maybe a little bit more. And they span all of the different research areas that we have. So we have some in biology and biotechnology, including the tissue chips investigation that we talked about, immunosenescence, and another tissue chip investigation looking at human muscle cells. We have some educational outreach activities that are coming back on this flight. Let's see, several. One that's called Genes in Space. It's part of a student competition to design investigations that will look at genomics and that kind of thing on orbit. So that one's launching and returning on SpaceX 25. Let's see what else we have. A lot of physical and science investigations coming back on this flight. A lot of them are looking at material science. So by processing materials in space, we can understand how how to make better materials that form with the characteristics that we want. So a lot of investigations in that field have been occurring and coming down. And then some technology demonstration and development investigations as well, looking at different technologies, both for use on the ground and in space. So lots of great and very diverse science coming down on this flight.
Thanks, Heidi.
All right, thank you. So Ken Kramer has a follow-up question. Ken?
No, it's okay. Thank you. It got answered before.
Okay, so that's our final question. So that's going to wrap up our things for today. And just as a reminder, NASA and SpaceX's commercial resupply mission CRS-25 is targeting tomorrow, July 14th at 8:44 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And we will have live launch coverage starting at 8:15 p.m. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you for your participation. Participants, you may disconnect at this time.